All right, ladies and gentlemen, I call now for a public hearing regarding the proposed 2025-2026 fiscal year budget for the city. Finance Committee of the Council reviewed the proposed budget during the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday, May the 28th. The draft of the proposed budget shall be available for inspection and review at City Hall and on the City of Lula website commencing this evening. The proposed budget shall be submitted to the council for consideration on or after June 16 during a council meeting. Cindy, you want to give the initial presentation and then we'll call. Go ahead.
As we did last time, if you go to the third page in, counting the cover page as one, it gives you a general overview of the general fund. It is balanced with a projected revenue of $1,628,800 and planned expenditures of $1,628,800. And you get into the details if you follow on. Basically, the general fund revenue side is on page 6 of 32, where we get our funds. The tax revenue side of that, which does not include any property tax, does not propose any property tax, is $1,392,500. So that is your largest percentage of funds for our operations. That's actually almost 85.5%. The other ones are licensing and permitting fees, which is $41,900. Right now, we're not projecting any intergovernmental revenue. Charges for services, which are the street lights, printing, duplicating, notary services, rentals of the park. We're in Depot. We're projecting $31,300 for the year. A small amount for fines and forfeitures for our courts. We're only projecting $1,000. Interest revenue remains steady. We're projecting $33,000. Contributions and donations, most of that would be what we get for Christmas, for the Christmas time. So that's only $1,500. Miscellaneous revenues, which is cemetery burials, activity fees out of railroad days. If we get reimbursed from our insurance carrier for any damage to equipment or buildings, we're projecting a revenue of $37,200, and then we do project some transfers, basically from the other utility funds, and those we'll get to when we get into the utility funds. But we're projecting a $90,400 transfer in fees from other funds. If you go to page 9, this is where we start into the details of the general fund. The first section there is legislative body, which is you as a council. It basically remains fairly consistent over the previous years, but we're projecting an expense between personnel is $42,254, which is your the taxes, salaries, any other reimbursements that go to you. And then for contracted services, it's an additional $32,250, which is liability insurance, travel, dues and fees, and training and education, which brings your total budget up to $74,504. And as you can see, that's less than what we are currently budgeted at $86,589. If you go to page 10, that's the big item. In our expense side, that's the administrative side of the house.
We're good.
We're good? Okay. The personnel cost is $563,475, which is an increase from this year. Purchasing contracted services, that includes your elections this fall at $16,000. Engineering services at $40,000, legal fees at $95,000, professional accounting at $13,000, technical services for issues like the IT support that includes our email accounts, Microsoft licensing, etc., is an additional $24,000. We'll continue to carry Unicode through there because they will not be completed with the code update prior to July 1st, but hopefully sometime in the fall. So that's why that additional $8,000 continues. So the total for purchase services, if you look at page 11, is going to be $329,012. Supplies, which is $108,000, which is less than this year. And capital outlays, which we project for LMIG expenditures, our match for that. Municipal court, while we haven't been meeting at the present moment, we do have to plan for it. So we're projecting personnel costs, no personnel costs, but purchase and contractor services, so that's the judge, the solicitor, and training that goes with them at $26,080. Supplies would come out of general funds, so none supported there. So total projected expenditure, which is a definite increase from the past, is $26,080. A new line item that has not been there in the past is jails. The judge wants to have the ability on those rare occasions that he could have somebody placed in the Hall County Jail or the Banks County Jail for a short period of time. So we're budgeting $2,000 for that. Go to page 13. This is our Community Services Division, otherwise known as Public Services. Personnel cost is $333,616. Purchase and contracted services, $95,425. And that includes various things that we do in the community, from cemetery maintenance, flowers at the Veterans Park, maintaining the bathrooms at the pool building, repairs and maintenance of vehicles that fall under there, and that's where the $95,000. Supply items for them would come up to $31,038 with no capital overlays and a projected total expense of $460,079, which is slightly more than the $423 that we budgeted this year. Recreation, it's basically small items under the supply, and we had initially started it, but it's gone to zero. It is all being covered under Public Works, Community Services at this point. Planning and zoning, that goes into the board that was just in front of you this evening. Basically covering attorney's fees, their liability insurance, the travel for their training, dues and fees, training and education, planning commission compensation, for a total of $18,500. And that's their total expenses. The next one is your downtown development. It's on page 17. If you look through there, we're proposing no personnel cost. Everything is in purchase and contract services. And we're proposing $33,750. That is split in to provide our development authorities some ability to operate. Professional services of $4,000. That's to do some planning and forecasting. Liability insurance of $1,000. $1,000 for advertising. $250 for any printing and binding. $2,500 for travel. $2,500 for dues and fees, and $5,000 for training and education for the 7-member board, and then $17,500 for other operating needs they have as they work on the development of the community. The total is $33,750, and so the total general fund is, like I said, is balanced at $1,628,800. That represents a decrease from this year's budget of, an increase from this year's budget of $56,216. Any questions on the general fund? All right, we go to page 19.
I'll reiterate,
Yes.
no property tax.
What?
I'll reiterate, no property tax.
All right, so we're going into detail now on the water and sewer side. This is set up slightly different from the general fund because this year we're breaking out water and wastewater as they should be, as separate line items. So you see there. So the revenues, total revenues is projected at $2,373,341. We will come back to that at the end because that reflects $900,000 phase 2 tap fees that would come up from Moss Farms. So that's restricted funds. That should not be in their general operating funds. And then an additional, at this point, water taps of $180,000. That's projecting over the next 12 months, so July 1st to June 30th, 26, of 120 homes. And so we're counting on.
That's what I was asking.
So our operating, as you see, our operating budget this year was $1,954,000. We're going up to the 2.3, but those two restricted funds make up a good chunk of that. All right, if you go to page 20, we can get into the expense side of the water and wastewater. Once again, everything on the blue, to the right-hand side of the blue line is the breakout. So employee cost is $471,446. That includes water, wastewater, and the distribution folks. Then we go on to the purchase and contracted services. And it starts at the bottom of page 20, goes through 21. And you can see they're duplicate, and it goes on to page 22. Total projected expenses, $327,300, which is basically $110,000 less than what we budgeted this year. But it's broken out, $136,150 is for the water side, $191,150 is for the sewer. Starting on page 22, you have supply items, once again broken out by water and wastewater, and they basically duplicate themselves. So on page 23, for supplies, $276,285. That is a slight decrease from this year of $12,000, $14,000. And then capital outlays. As we started at the beginning of this, you have our GFA payment of $98,610. That's basically the sewer line I and the refinancing of the plant. That was done several years ago. The unallocated reserves of $900,000 for tap fees and for sewer, and unallocated reserves of $180,000 for water, with a $46,000 reserve, $46,500, trying to build the reserves in the water side. And then the transfers that we saw in the general fund earlier of $67,000 into the, $73,200 into the general fund. If you look at the bottom of page 23, if you ask me specifically what the operating costs are of those divisions, water is $473,073. That is where we took out the there's no loans there. We took out the franchise, the transfers to the general fund, we took out the tap reserves there. And on the wastewater, instead of being $1,624,000, the actual daily operations is $598,458. Any questions on that? All right. The next fund is the solid waste fund. We've been talking individually right now. We just completed an RFP for waste management services. You have seen the not comments, but notes as far as continuing with our current contract. But the charges for services, basically what we charge our residents, we're projecting a revenue of $267,000. And that does take into account projected CPI increase in November from Waste Management. That's part of their contract. The expense side also balanced at $267,000. $255,000 of that is basically, or $251,000 is garbage pickup that we pay Waste Management directly. Supply items are zero. Capital outlays, we are asking for a transfer of $12,000 into the general fund to cover, at least partially cover, the work that Teresa and Tangi and Amy do in preparing the bills and taking the telephone calls and addressing what Hoyt and his guys do in repairing cans or delivering cans. All right, the next one, and this hopefully will be the final year you'll see this, is the ARPA fund worksheet. Right now it's 0 and 0, and the reason for that is as we're closing it out, we use the transfer to cover city costs. So it's a one-time because we received less than $10 million. We did it as a revenue replacement. So all our expenses still need to be done by the end of the year, but they're not reflected here. They're reflected at individual projects. The next one is LMEG. Right now, we're still attempting to get our $43,000, which reflects the projected revenues. We're also working on a local area funds, additional funds that we could spend. So as soon as we get back with, that Wayne makes his presentation, you accept the audit, we'll be back in good graces and we should get those funds. Page 27 deals with the SPLOST, 2017 SPLOST funds. We're projecting a $40,000 revenue, and we're projecting expending, let me back up. This is Banks County 2017. We're not expecting revenues next year, but we are expecting to spend funds that are sitting in the bank to $455,000. So as the one big holder that's there for us, as you know, is the Railroad Street County Line Road over there where we're repairing. I would tell you, one is we're still being considered by both Senator Ossoff and for $1.6 million worth of funding, so we're still there, so that will help offset because that project is about $3.2 million in its total expenses, so anything that will help us not having to use our funds for that, we will continue to pursue. The next one is Banks County T-SPLOST. All we're showing you there right now is a projected budget of $11,000 in revenue. At this point, we're not projecting expending any of that. We want to let it grow a little more so we can actually do a project with it. And then the final page is SPLOST 7, which is the Hall County SPLOST. Right now, we are projecting to spend $73,000 on that over the next year, and we'll continue to monitor that. And I would tell you, we'll be back for amendments during the year when we get more specifics for you. But that's that on the budgets. The final 2 pages have, just for your information, one is city-owned property. We actually own 24 pieces of property throughout the city, a total of 74.5 acres. The largest parcel basically being the water treatment plant at 27.4 acres, and the smallest one being about 0.23, actually 0.1 of an acre. So the well house out of the County Line Road water tank site. So that's for your consideration. The next one, the last page, is where we spend funds with various organizations that we participate with. Basically, Georgia Municipal Association, Georgia Mountains Regional Commission, Greater Hall Chamber of Commerce, and I need to add to that because we're part of the Economic Development Committee of that, which has its own expenses. The Lula Development Authority has just started up. For myself and whoever the assistant is membership and participation in the Georgia City Management Association, City County Management Association. Tangi is the city clerk, and both in the GMCA and GFOA. Planning for our council members, looking at having them join the Georgia Planning Association, and part of the discussions this weekend with the downpour and the rain, we found out that there's actual training at Brasstown Ball in October that's cheaper than sending them to GPA. It's being sponsored by DCA, so that's probably the route we'll go with them. Building officials, right now, that's all the contractor services, so there's no cost. And what we have not done, but we need to look into, is becoming members of the American Public Works Association, Georgia chapter for Hoyt, and maybe one other person out of that division to start working the bigger pictures there. And then your water, wastewater, being members of the Georgia Rural Water Association. The final one there is, as we move forward and we have somebody that pulls the court clerk duties, there will be training and conferences to attend for them. Any questions?
Good job.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So given the general fund, are we still, after those adjustments and the recommendation from the Finance Committee, are we still at an offset of 5 mils?
The budget was not built on millage, but a mill will, we're waiting for both Banks County and Hall County, since they're going to work through the constitutional amendment that passed. Based on last year's numbers, so it'll change. I would say between the 2 counties, 1 mill would generate about $118,000 for us. I know that was a hedge, but since we didn't build the budget based on a millage, that's what a millage rate would raise.
So if we didn't have local option sales tax and the other revenues, folks, our property tax would be almost as high as Hall County. But it's not. That claim that Billy?
It is. With that explanation, is anybody here to be heard at this budget public hearing? Anyone here to be heard?
Yeah, let me,
Come up, please, sir.
I don't know if it's considered budget, but that road that goes, I guess that's Railroad Avenue, that's back through there, where it keeps falling in. Is that on the budget to fix that road?
Yes.
Yes.
Man,
We're
that thing,
trying to find a way to fund it.
boy, that thing getting bad. I went down there the other
And it's
day.
currently designed, like I said, we're trying to work with Senator Ossoff's office on some congressionally directed funding of $1.6 million. That would, if If we get that, that'll help us. If we don't get it, it basically will use up all the SPOS we have just to fix that.
You're gonna have to create some more revenue.
Next,
Thanks.
Couple wood. Anybody else here to be heard at this public hearing? Anybody else here to be heard? Then I will close the public hearing. Mr. Mayor.